Thanks very much for checking out this episode of Turning to Him. If you enjoy what you hear, feel free to subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave comments, share it with your friends, all the basic stuff. When you do things like that, it makes it easier for other people to find the channel and add goodness into their lives. Thanks again. But I want to hear more of the story. So when we left off, you and your brothers are in Phoenix.
Yep.
And so what happens?
Yeah, so we form our band and we start paying our dues. So we're playing everywhere. Every week we're playing something multiple times a week in some situations. And you know, the original dream was to be secular. Honestly, it wasn't to be a Christian artist or an LDS artist or anything like that. What we wanted to do, because and I've got to tell you why, because the way that we grew up and the music we liked to listen to, none of it was Christian based. We always kind of felt, and maybe I'm just speaking for myself, I always felt it was just a little cheesy or it wasn't rocking enough. I like a bunch of boys, we want to have fun and have some energy. And I was like, you know, we will be a great example of members of the church who are out there doing cool things, you know, and as we win a Grammy, people can be like, hey, that guy's a member, you know, and we wanted to be like this light in the darkness, you know, like, I guess like what Steve Young would be in the NFL. It was like, yeah,
that's just what I was thinking.
So, and that's what we thought. We're like, okay, well, that's what we'll do. You know, and so in the beginning days, we were playing in bars and clubs and really anywhere that we could, and playing for a good long while. You know, writing songs and making albums, and what was interesting is we were smack dab in the middle of a huge transition within the music industry, where you know our model was based off of like the '90s, where it's like you play everywhere. You know, and you make these albums, you sell these albums out of the trunk of your car, and it's real grassroots type of stuff. And as we were doing that, that mode of making it in the music business was starting to die out. And it started to be like, okay, social media, YouTube, and all these things. And we didn't quite transition well. We were pulled in lots of different directions in that way, and so we ended up really not getting a lot of traction, and we would play these places excuse me, we would play these shows where the people there loved it, you know, and we love saying, man, we melted their faces because we were high energy, we were a lot of fun on stage, and people would be like, yeah, that was amazing, but then they'd want to have a beer with us afterwards. And we're like, no, sorry, we got to go. And so that was another thing a little bit against us there. We weren't mingling with people because we're like, we're not in a place that we're supposed to be, you know?
Yeah.
And so we would cut out and you know, book another show, and we were just really frustrated. We're like, what is going on here? And here in the Phoenix Valley, there's not a lot of there's not an organized music scene. You know, there's not a sound that's coming out of Phoenix, per se. You know, in other areas, whether you're talking like Austin or Nashville or Seattle, LA, you've got one or two streets that are packed with music, just music clubs everywhere. Phoenix is so spread out that we would drive an hour to get to a show on the west end of the valley when we lived on the east end, and no one was there, you know? And so they're like, man, what's going on? And we end up getting what we think is a really big show, and that's in Hollywood. We play this show, and it's actually a music awards. It's called the LA Music Awards. We played that stage. We won an award, and we're like, man, you know, like really good opportunity there. And we played that show, and we felt icky. We didn't feel good. And it was an interesting thing because it was our first taste of like, okay, this is a music mecca. We're in Los Angeles, you know, Southern California, and the people that we are working with are the real deal. Maybe low on the totem pole, but they're up from Phoenix, you know.
Like we're pointed in the right direction here.
Exactly. And the experience that we had, even though, it was a big triumphant victory and a triumphant show, we came back from that feeling off. And it was one of those things where it was a combination of, and this is years into the efforts of trying to make it. And it was a combination of just some of the people that we were dealing with and the atmosphere that we were in. And we just felt it was an undeniable feeling like this is not for us. As much as we wanted to be this light in the darkness, for whatever reason, looking back at it in hindsight, I can imagine the Lord being like, nope, nope,
Hmm.
nope.
Hmm.
Here's this big show that's coming up. It's not going to do you any good. Like, you are not supposed to be here. This is not for you, and it was kind of a tough pill to swallow, to be
I was
honest.
going to say, yeah, tell me about that thought process because up until this point, you have invested years, you've invested money, you've invested all this. I don't know if you're married at this time or not, but like okay, so this is a family thing.
Yeah,
You are taking steps forward, and now you're at a bridge and you feel these promptings of like, this isn't for you.
yeah,
That's got to be tough. I mean, that's in every movie of like the young band that's doing it, where they get that song where like, are you gonna choose money? Like, are you gonna pay the price? Or are
right.
you gonna wash out?
Yeah,
And
yep.
so, tell me about that. Like, was that hard? Tell me about the conversation that you had with your brothers, with your wife, with anyone.
Yeah, yeah. And so to answer your question, family, like I was married with a child at that time. Ivory had been born. I actually met my wife in a recording studio. She was there. It was we were cutting our first album, and she was there, and her boyfriend or her love interest at the time was the guy who was recording us. And he's like, "Hey, I got this band. I'm recording," and he's giving us a huge deal. He saw us play live. He's like, "Hey, I'm a student here at this recording studio. I'll do it for free." I'm like, "Yes." So he brings his girlfriend, and because I think that she's taken, I'm
Yes.
totally myself. I didn't have
Yes.
like, okay, here's a pretty girl. I didn't like have break out into the sweats. I was like, totally myself. And I just completely won her over. As nerdy as I am.
Well, I mean, yeah, for obvious reasons. I mean,
Yeah.
clearly the other guy had no chance.
Yeah,
Had no
I,
chance at
I,
all.
that's
Yeah.
what I like to tell myself. But that's how deep this goes. A lot of people will say like, "Oh, I wanted to be a rock star when I grew up," and then they grow out of that. But
Sure.
we were not that way. We're like, this is happening. We are in control here. We work hard enough, and big events happen while during the band. Like finding my wife and all this was happening. And so I've got a wife and a daughter, and I've got this 9 to 5 job that I've got, which was always just a temporary thing
Hmm. Hmm.
in my mind. And the music was how I was going to provide for my family. And so there's that hanging over our head as we're having this discussion as well as a band. And we're saying, look, we've patterned our entire lives. Like, I wanted to be a musician, probably a professional musician, probably since I was 10. And so almost every step in my life has been towards that because I got this tunnel vision. And I was like, the gospel's the most important. And I knew
Hmm.
that. I knew that in my brain and in my heart. I serve my mission diligently. But even on the mission, I was like, all right, when I get home, we're gonna hit the road. And so everything was leading up to this. And
Yes.
and we're faced with this decision. And it really wasn't much of a decision. Like we all knew. We're like, we do not feel good about this. And by that time, there was a little bit of burnout anyways, because we had been working so hard and for some reason had not had the success that we thought. And so at first, when we say, look, guys, we got to step back from this. This is not what the Lord wants from us. There was a little bit of well, it was an emotional time. Like it wasn't a little bit, it was a lot of bit.
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
emotion there, but there was a little bit of relief as well because like once you're done with that grind, you're like, okay, I don't have to go to practice 3 times a week to play with the band. I can spend some more time with the family. And so it was the combination of being tired, having that exhaustion, and the clarity of the message that we got from the Lord that made it a no-brainer type of decision. until after maybe a couple of months.
That's what I
And
was going to ask. So in your mind, were you done with music at
yeah,
this? It was
it,
over. It was
it
over.
became this deep. It was one. It's hard to explain. It's almost like, you don't realize that you've been cut because it cuts so deep. Because at first you're like, all these things I don't need to do anymore. I don't
Yeah.
need to worry about marketing and promotion. And maybe that's a little bit of the spirit saying, yes, this feels good. You're doing the right thing. But there was deep emotions there that I didn't realize that I had until later. And I found myself, after the emotions kind of drifted away, I found myself completely lost and not wanting to touch music again. I almost
Mhm.
viewed music, and it's not like I've had this experience, but the only way I can describe it is as if music was a fiance who left me at the altar,
Sure,
and
sure.
that's kind of how I felt. And I'm like, I'm not gonna open myself up to that again. It
Yep.
hurts too bad. And so I didn't want to keep pursuing music, but at the same time, I was adrift. I'm working for Wells Fargo. I don't necessarily and I've got all this talent and like you said, this effort and money and passion and creativity that has always been a part of my life, just lying dormant. And it became this weird sensation of just drifting.
Yeah.
That's a little bit hard to describe, to be honest with you.